If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation. What's going on, Knuckleheads? Welcome to another episode of the Fighters Rep video podcast. I'm your host, the Fighters Rep, and today we're going to be talking about Adrien the Problem Broner, who seems to have given HAYMON and Showtime a $10 million ultimatum. He says, if you want to get him back in the ring. And you know, in the beginning, when he was, very flashy and flamboyant, but also a really talented fighter, I was a big fan of Adrien Broner. And, I thought he did bring buzz with him, but obviously he was a little bit, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, for lack of a better phrase, because the guy was just trying too hard to be Floyd Mayweather Jr., as we've seen time and time again. And as we continue to see time and time again, all these Floyd Mayweather emulators and wannabes always end up either getting beat or embarrassed, by somebody. So, I've always thought it would be much more intelligent for people to kind of model, their fighting style, after, of course, people they admire, but don't try to imitate just one person. So anyway, Adrien Broner says that he wants $10 million to get back into the ring. And the problem with that is, it's either one of two things. Either Adrien Broner is pricing himself out so he never has to get back in the ring. Or Adrien Broner thinks he's worth $10 million. And the problem I have with that, if it's the latter, where Adrien Broner thinks he's worth $10 million, is the fact that he's actually lost 2 of his last 3 fights. And one of those fights was a draw. I mean, if we go back and we look at Adrien Broner's last 3 fights, which, mind you, he's only fought, those last 3 fights were in 3 years. So, I mean, his last fight was against Manny Pacquiao, where he lost a unanimous decision. The fight, and that was in 2019. The fight before that was Jesse Vargas in 2018. A year before that, where he earned a draw. And the fight before that was a loss to Mikey Garcia by unanimous decision. And that was in 2017. So he loses in 2017. He draws in 2018. He loses in 2019. And it's just, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that a fighter like Adrien Broner, or maybe it's not so crazy, but it's crazy that a fighter thinks that a guy like Adrien Broner thinks that he can, demand $10 million after having lost 2 of his last 3 fights and after having come up with a draw in his in one of those last 3 fights. I mean, unless the guy somehow can defy the true boxing nature of the world that we live in, where your price, your value goes down by 100% when you take that L, unless you're a massive star. I don't know how in any planet or in anybody's imagination Adrien Broner could expect $10 million. And here's the thing. I don't even want to watch Adrien Broner. A lot of people tuned in to Adrien Broner's fights just to see him lose because they thought he was obnoxious. And that first Maidana loss remains as one of the most satisfying losses of boxing fans, careers. I mean, when you see that fight and when you see people's reaction to it as they continue to repost it time and time again, you keep seeing comments about that fight where people review it and say, man, it's the most satisfying, beatdown that we've ever seen. And, the reason people wanted Adrian Broner to lose so badly was because he was really obnoxious. He was really brash. He was trying to do the Floyd Mayweather thing, but he was even more crude with it. He was more ratchet. He was like a ratchet 2.0 version of Floyd Mayweather, who wasn't as intelligent and wasn't as good of a fighter. And so I felt like when he took that L against Maidana, his stock just plummeted so hard. And then, in these past 3 fights, I appreciate the fact that he's made himself enough money to be comfortable, and I wish him the best. And in fact, I don't really wish for fighters to lose. Like, I didn't take satisfaction in Adrian Broner having an L on his record. I did, want Maidana to win that fight because I thought Adrian Broner was obnoxious, but I took no satisfaction in the guy taking an L, partly because when you take an L in boxing, it's so damaging to your career. I would have preferred he cleaned himself up and improved his technique and, cleaned up his personality a bit. But anyway, it's over and done with. But the fact that the guy is demanding $10 million after having lost 2 of his last 3 fights and having come away with a draw in one of them, it's almost like it's senile. It's crazy. How do you do that? Before I continue, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon below. This is the Fighter's Rep. We're not just a podcast. We also are the only pro kickboxing promotion in the state of California. So by supporting us, subscribing, donating to the channel, getting your Fighter's Rep gear in the link below, you're helping us build what I believe is the most action-packed promotion in the world and helping fighters showcase their talent. So please continue to join us, talk about combat sports, watch our free fights that we air here, watch our highlights and interviews that we air here, and continue to help us building our sport. Jose Figueroa says, fuck AB, Mikey versus Thurman 100%. That would be a great fight. I would love to watch Mikey Garcia versus Keith Thurman. I do think, though, that it's a very, very tough fight for Keith Thurman at this point. He has not been very active. He lost his last fight against Manny Pacquiao, who's, 40 years old at this point. And Mikey Garcia, man, has been active. He's looking good. He's only ever lost to a guy that's way bigger than him. And, it's a real tough fight. It's an uphill climb for Thurman. And if I'm Thurman, I don't take that fight. I take another fight to see where I'm at physically and mentally, if I even want to compete anymore. Because the guy looks like he's just not in it. He just looks to me like he's not in it. He's been out of the ring so long. The only time he came back in the past, what seems like few years, was to take an L against a 40-plus Manny Pacquiao, who obviously is still very talented, so you can't take anything away from Manny Pacquiao. But Keith Thurman, no, not a fight for you, that Mikey Garcia. Maybe Keith Thurman versus Adrian Broner, that would be a good fight. But again, worth $10 million? Who's going to pay for that? And then we've also got to come away from this pandemic and see what the sport looks like after that. Are people going to want to spend money on it? I hope that there's an even greater need for entertainment coming away from this, since we haven't been able to watch any sports. And I'm hoping that people will be able to shell out some money. We've even been thinking of doing a pay-per-view card as soon as this whole quarantine is lifted, assuming that the Athletic Commission allows us to do it. And again, we were thinking a pay-per-view card because we figure that the gyms will be open and the guys will be allowed to fight before we'll be allowed to put a big event together where, more than 50 people or 100 people can be together in the same place. So, that's where our thinking is. So who knows? Maybe we come away from this and, the pandemic has got people wanting combat sports so bad that, people fork over that kind of money. But I just think Adrien Broner, man, what an idiot, dude. On top of, on top of not being worth the $10 million, asking for that much money, knowing the state of the sport right now, knowing the state of people and the economy and everything else, just kind of crazy. Fight Life Nation, my brother Marco says, LOL, 10 million for Broner. It's crazy, man. It says, sorry, George, Broner's a bum who never beat anyone. Broner only did well against second-rate opponents outside of Paulie. Who has he beaten? You're right about that. He says he wanted to beat Floyd Mayweather so badly. He was the opposite of original. The dude was an absolute clone and actually a very poor version, a poor man's version of Floyd Mayweather. Hell, I wouldn't even call him that. He was just, I don't know what he was. But he was still a 4-division champion. So, I mean, that goes to show you. That goes to show you that, with the right sort of management and guidance and whatnot, and even guys who are not, their heart's not all the way in it, can still find some success in a very corrupt sport in boxing. A sport that I love very much, but a sport that at the end of the day is just very corrupt. You know what I mean? Lost One says, hey, man, hope you're doing okay. You're such a great interviewer. Broner is gone. Hey, I appreciate that comment, Lost One. I was trying to see if we can get a guest on the show tonight. We didn't have anybody available this evening, and I kind of didn't really reach out to anybody until the last minute. But I do have a fantastic guest lined up for Wednesday. Hopefully we're going to have Dane Turney on the show. He's actually a fighters rep champion. He was our first ever striking champion, although it was in Muay Thai, even though we don't do Muay Thai anymore. But we're going to have him on. He's a young man with a ton of talent. We'll have him on Wednesday. Lost One says, I think you're smart for the pay-per-view. After this, it's been a big drought. That's the thing. That's why I've even been considering pay-per-view. It's because, typically we like to keep our fights free. That's what we've been doing in order to build the brand, in order to build the sport, because, kickboxing has been neglected, and I kind of want to be the guy, along with you guys and your help, to lift kickboxing back up to the level of boxing and MMA in these sports. But, it's hard. It's hard, and after this pandemic, I mean, we're going to have to see, are people going to be so starved for entertainment that they're going to be willing to fork over a little bit of money for a pay-per-view? Or are they not? Are they going to be too broke? Is the economic situation going to be too messed up? And the only reason I would even consider a pay-per-view is because if they're not going to let us congregate with 50 or more people, then, I mean, we just can't make money as a promotion. Right now, we can't make money as a promotion because we can't do an event. But let's say the gyms open up, CSAC is ready to sanction fights, the fighters are ready to go. Let's say all of that lines up, but we can't congregate in Los Angeles 50 or more people. Well, that's just going to kind of force us to think outside the box, and that may force us to do a pay-per-view event where we charge, $5 or maybe $9.99 or something like that for a pay-per-view card to give people something to watch, and also to keep the promotion active, to keep the fighters active, because it's hard. It's hard to just sit here and do nothing. And these fighters, man, I mean, they've already got it tough. They've got it tough already, not knowing when they're going to fight, not knowing what's going to happen next. So, it's hard being a fighter, and the least we can do is, try to help them out by keeping this thing active. If it means we lose a little money or have to experiment with pay-per-view, hey, let's do it, you know what I mean? But definitely a pay-per-view at this level, at least I don't believe, would make us anywhere near the revenue that ticket sales do. And so I don't know. I would be willing to do it though, just to keep the sport moving, just to keep the fighters active, just to keep the brand in people's minds. I would do it, and we're set up for that. That's a great thing about Fighters Rep. We've been doing live streams for for a long time, since Fighters Rep 5, we've been live streaming, and that was last year. And so we are set up for that, and all we would have to do is set up a paywall between the live stream. We would try to keep it cheap, but essentially we would have to. It would be the only way to recoup any sort of money, since we wouldn't be able to sell tickets. Let's see here. Fight Life Nation says, it goes to show you the titles are garbage, referring to Adrien Broner's 4 championships in different weight classes. Fight Life Nation, they gave him a title fight coming off a loss, and even Floyd gave him grief about it. What's the president of IKF opinion on having fights without crowds if CSAC gives the okay? I don't think Steve Fossum would totally be against it. I mean, as long as, he's allowed to sanction events, I think he'd be into it. But of course, we'd have to see the status of the disease, because I'm sure if there's still a lot of infections out there, or a risk of infection, he won't like it. So that's something we're gonna have to ask him. Lost One says, try to push for a White interview. I really think you can get it. He's a cool guy. I would love to get him on the channel. I'm gonna reach out to Dean again, who we had not too long ago, his brother, and see if we can get Dillian on the channel. But yeah, knuckleheads, tell me what you think. Adrien Broner asking for $10 million, man. It's not time for that, Adrien. It's not time for that. You're obnoxious. You're not as talented as you think you are. Most people that are boxing fans just want to see you lose, and I'm not a hater. I don't want to see you lose, but I did think it was funny when you lost to Marcos Maidana because you were being a dick. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that a guy would want that much money. So tell me what you guys think about that. That's kind of all I have for you. Be sure to tune in tomorrow at 7. Every day at 7, we're going to post something, whether it's a fight highlight or whatever it is. So be sure to tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific. And, of course, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays for the podcast where you can talk to me live. Hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it if you haven't already. Donate. Show some love in the super chat. $2 here, $5 here, whatever it is. It all gets reinvested right back into the promotion. And get your Fighters Rep gear in the link below. And, hey, hopefully, we get over this soon. But anyway, knuckleheads, that's all I've got for you this evening. Have a good one. We'll see you next time. Keep it clean.